Tonight, Larfleeze takes a back seat to a workplace comedy, and I am all for it. Constantine gets the powers of Shazam, and yet somehow an action figure has not been made? And Gordon finally snaps and kills a bunch of people. I refuse to elaborate. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 99 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and episode 99. Can you believe that? It's right on the cusp. Episode 100. And I really wish that 100 was an episode that I had a whole big thing planned for, which I still might. I'm not saying I don't. You have to watch episode 100 to find out. But 104 is the anniversary episode, so it's just that little bit off, a tiny little bit off of where I'm actually hoping a big deal would be. Speaking of episode 100, just going to say it's at the beginning and the end. It's a fifth week. We got annuals. We got backup stories, so be sure to check that out, especially because I think we're going to be doing some Trinity War stuff in there as well. And it's the beginning of Psy War, which is the far less interesting war, written almost entirely by Scott Lobdell. You're welcome for that. Anyway, I don't really have a lot I want to talk about going into it this week. It's a hell of a week. It's not in a good way. I'm not exactly happy with most of the comics that came out this week, but they were there. So let's just talk about them. I'll give you a rundown first real quick. We have Batman the Dark Knight, Catwoman, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Talon, Batman/Superman, Superman, Larfleeze, Aquaman, Flash, All-Star Western, Green Team, Teen Titans, Constantine, and Justice League Dark, the last two of which are our weekly tie-ins and or main parts of Trinity War, and we'll be taking care of those first. But yeah, stay tuned for Superman and Teen Titans, because I have words. I have many words. At least 3 of them are good, but I wouldn't put it much higher than that. Anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump right into it. Trinity War. Justice League Dark number 22, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Mikel, Janin. So this is the next part of Trinity War, I believe part 3. And last time was Justice League of America, where Superman was locked up. He was approached by the Question. It was a lot of stuff going on, but the long and short of it was the main 3 of the Justice League, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, were all kind of separated a little bit. And this issue just drives that home. But first, we open up with Madame Xanadu, who we thought died in an explosion. And turns out she's actually been taken captive by the Outsider, I think his name is. I could be wrong with that. But regardless, he basically says, hey, you can see the future. That's a problem, because I've got a lot of plans and whatnot. But trust me, big stuff's already been going on since you've been gone. And we see in Argus, Firestorm is currently just messing with a bunch of rocks in front of him because Amanda Waller wants him to turn one of them into kryptonite as a safety measure, and he ends up doing it. And Waller's like, okay, cool. Be ready to do that again, because it's going to be a big deal. And then we see the autopsy of Dr. Light, who, of course, his death was the progenitor of all of this, and basically everyone there, including Zatanna now at this point, is like, yeah, we can't tell from the autopsy whether or not it was an intentional heat visioning or an accidental heat visioning. It doesn't really work that way. But then all of a sudden there is a bunch of smoke coming out of Dr. Light's body, and wouldn't you know it, it's Phantom Stranger, and he's like, hey everyone, I'm here, here's the thing, Wonder Woman, she's going off to mess with Pandora's box. Can't do that. That's will just result in everybody dying. And Batman's like, Zatanna, do we trust this guy? Is he cool? And he's like, yeah, I mean, I guess he's cool. Sure, why not? So yeah, they all start rushing off to go try to find Wonder Woman and get her to stop what she's doing. Meanwhile, Superman is talking to the Question, and the Question's like, okay, I want you to find the answer, Superman. That's kind of my whole thing. And in order to get you down the right path, and he unhooks Superman from all of his like restraints and stuff and hands him a newspaper clipping. And Superman's like, oh my God. So then Cyborg comes to visit Superman. And when he hears that Steve Trevor's inside, because Steve Trevor's actually at Dr. Light's autopsy, he's like, oh crap, all right, we need all units back here because clearly someone just broke into Superman's thing. But Superman's already punching through walls, ready to bust his way out. Then we go back to New York City. Wonder Woman's talking to the Justice League Dark, because if you remember, this is actually their book. And she's like, hey, look, I've read all your files from Steve Trevor on all of you guys. I know everything about you. I don't understand the magic that is Pandora and her box, so I need your guys' help. And Constantine's like, yeah, no, we kind of got our own problem with Madame Xanadu disappearing, so piss off. And she just basically threatens him, picks him up off the ground, and everyone else is like, yeah, no, I say we do Wonder Woman's thing. She seems super cool. We're gonna do that. And they all kind of come down on the side of Superman needs to be saved. Like, no matter what, Superman comes first. So Constantine's like, yeah, all right, well, we can't just stay out here in the open. Let's head into the House of Mystery. And as they walk their way inside, we see Batman, the entirety of the Justice League of America, Shazam, Flash, and Zatanna. I think that's everyone. Oh, and Aquaman. So back at Argus, Superman holds out the newspaper clipping, and it says that Dr. Psycho, who is a noted telepath or whatever, was in Kahndaq and may have killed a guy the day before Superman, quote-unquote, lost control. And Cyborg's like, how in the hell did I miss this? I scoured every database. And Question's like, I read newspapers. That makes me better than you. But at that point, Amanda Waller comes in with the whole brigade, army, whatever you want to call it, of Argus soldiers. And the people responding to Cyborg's request, which is Element Woman, Martian Manhunter, Green Arrow, and Firestorm, all show up. And basically Waller's saying, okay, regardless of what new evidence you have, you're going back in that cell, Superman. You're a threat to humankind if you're not in control right now. And Superman's like, look, here's the thing. I'm feeling really sick, and he looks really sick. And he's like, I'm just gonna go take care of this, and you can't stop me. And Green Arrow has his bow drawn, and he's like, Waller, I think we should help him. And she's like, oh, well, I say no, shoot him. And he's like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. So he fires off a smoke bomb arrow, provides a bit of cover for the rest of them to escape. But of course they don't do that. So then we see the standoff between Batman's team and Wonder Woman's team. And Wonder Woman hears Phantom Stranger say, like, look, don't go after Pandora. It's a bad time. And she just lassos him up and says, like, why is that a bad time? He's like, I don't know. It just seems like it's a bad time. I really have no idea why. And it's just like, okay. So he's clearly not who we should be listening to. I'm going to go save Superman and find Pandora. Who all is with me? And we see a couple of people cross over. A couple of people join over to Wonder Woman's side, including Stargirl, Black Orchid, I think Aquaman? No, Zatanna is maybe on her side. But we see a little cutaway here where Shazam is talking to Constantine off to the side. And he's like, hey, Shazam, I know about your secret identity, Billy Batson. I also know about your family. Why don't me and you have a talk over in my book where we could have a nice little tie-in? And Shazam's like, fair enough, let's go. So at that point, we see Green Lantern Simon Baz comes in to kind of just bum rush Wonder Woman. Zatanna puts up a spell to teleport them out, and they're gone. So cut back to Argus, and everyone's just fighting. Superman gets blasted with a laser, and he looks like he's about to straight up kill the dude that fired it. And Cyborg and Martian Manhunter jump in. They're like, Superman, you cool? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm cool. I just really hurt. So he says, Amanda, all due respect, I'm out. And he just blasts a hole in the ceiling, flies out, and one by one, everyone just starts following him. And Green Arrow is even like, look, I know I'm part of the Justice League of America, and I'm supposed to be on your side, but like, you suck. And he leaves. And as Firestorm's the last one to go, Waller looks at him and is just like, you know what you have to do, right? You're the last line of defense. And Firestorm's like, okay. So he leaves as well. So then we see all the pieces in motion. Superman wants to go find Dr. Psycho to get information on that. Wonder Woman wants to find Pandora to hopefully get information on that. Batman wants to find Wonder Woman because apparently finding Pandora is going to end all of the world. And we see that all of this is the outsider who's like, yeah, no, I'm playing 5D chess, man. This is all as I wanted it to be. And Xanadu says, like, psh, the Justice League will beat you. And he's like, oh, you don't understand. I've got a mole inside the Justice League. Tee-hee. So, yeah, that's the issue. That's everything in it. I like it. This is the first issue where it feels like, okay, we're finally getting the idea of how is this a three-sided battle? How is this something where three different sides come up against each other? Obviously, one of them is Pandora, one's Phantom Stranger, and one's Question, as we've been setting up throughout this entire New 52 area. But now we're also getting the difference of Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman all going on their own things as well, some of which directly conflicting with each other. So I feel like this is doing a really good job of like, nope, we're showing all the different sides of this. We're seeing how it all comes together. I'm into it. I think it's very well written. Jeff Lemire very rarely lets me down in that regard. Art-wise, looks great. I do think shoving in that Constantine tie-in, if you weren't reading Constantine, it's not something you can really gloss over. Maybe they'll mention it in a later issue of this, but it just seems like, no, you have to go read Constantine to figure out what in the hell that was about. So that's the only real misstep. Overall, though, I did enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one, I'll give it an 8.5. I think this is a really solid issue and is really setting up the stakes pretty well. I think the only way it could really misstep from this point forward is if nobody really does anything. Like if Superman doesn't find Dr. Psycho, and if Wonder Woman doesn't find Pandora, and if Batman doesn't find Wonder Woman. Like, if none of that happens, it's just going to be padding, and I'm frankly pretty much done with that. So, yeah, 8.5 for what it is, though. Constantine number 5, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Renato Guedes. So this is a tie-in to Trinity War. This picks up pretty much in the middle of part 3, but you can read it right afterwards. And in part 3, Constantine took Shazam off to the side and said, hey, I know about your family and how your powers work. You got to come with me. And this issue picks up in New York City in Lloyd's Bar, the joint. And he sees that there's this guy named Mop Mop who's just drunk off his ass, and he's passed out in one of the booths, and he's like, all right, Mop Mop, get out of here, go on, Scram. And he's like, let me sleep here. And he's like, nah, not going to do that. And then Constantine and Shazam come through the door from the back, clearly a magical teleportation thing. And he's like, hey, Lloyd, need you to close up the bar. I'm gonna do something with this. And he steps in, and Shazam's immediately like, okay, what do you got on my family? Like, if this is so important, what do you got going on? He's like, yeah, I'll get this. Here's the thing. I need to know how much you know about your powers. And he's like, more than you do. He's like, I doubt that. I know a lot about it, but here's the thing. When we were out there in Trinity War, I had this magical feeling that you had a spell coming across the globe aimed right at you and maybe your family, and it won't be able to find you if you transport back into your other form, and therefore you'll save the day because the spell will be lost, and then we can take steps to neutralize it. So just need you to turn back because you only got like 30 seconds until it arrives. And so Billy's like, okay, I guess. Shazam turns back into a kid. He's like, great, awesome, doing great, kid. Now just hold on for 1 minute. And he goes over and he opens up a box with what seems to be a voodoo doll inside of it. And he twists the neck of it and says, cool. And then Billy tries to say Shazam because he's like, you seem a little creepy, dude. I'm not into that. But when he tries to say Shazam, turns out Constantine traded their voices. So now Constantine has the voice of Billy Batson, and Billy Batson sounds like Constantine, which I have never wanted an animated adaptation more than this scene. I would love to hear that. But regardless, he's using it. He's like, look, I'm just taking care of your powers because here's the thing, whatever's going down in Trinity War, you are way too powerful and you're going to mess stuff up. So we're just going to sit here in this bar, keep you off the board, and not even worry about it. So handcuffs him to the bar and says, yep, all right, so that's that. Meanwhile, in the Alps, Mr. E gets a call from Mop Mop saying, hey, Constantine's here. He's the guy you're looking for, right? Like, he's also here with some Superman lookalike. What do you want me to do? And it's like, well, Constantine needs to be taken care of, therefore kill him. And now is your time to prove your loyalty to the cult of the Cold Flame. And so he's like, all right, says some magic words. And then all of a sudden, Mop Mop's stomach just cracks open and a giant demon crawls out of it. And we see Mystery is looking at New York via a circle of spellcasters. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, John, he basically explains the plan. He's just like, yeah, no, just gonna hold you here. No big deal. And the demon busts in through the wall and starts attacking Constantine. He's like, oh, Englishman, I must kill the Englishman. So he starts punching Constantine in the face. Constantine, having the power of Shazam, of course, turns it on, becoming his own version of Shazam. And as he does it, it apparently really, really hurts him. Like, it is draining him. He is not okay, and he's barely able to stay afloat. But in all the wreckage, Billy manages to get free of his handcuffs. He goes over to the doll that Constantine uses. Lloyd is like, don't you do it, kid. I'm not mad. Like, Constantine's got to be able to do his stuff. And we see Constantine is already starting to get weaker. He takes a hit from the demon and goes down on the ground. And Billy realizes, wait a minute, hold on. He says he wants the Englishman. I sound like Constantine right now, so let me see if I can distract him. And so he calls over, he's like, oi, ugly, what's a big bloody bloke like you doing? You want me, right? I traded bodies with this kid. Come and get me. So it distracted the demon enough that Shazam Constantine is able to hop on the back of the demon and rip its head off with just sheer strength. And then he's like, cool, that's done, Shazam. And he's about to say Shazam, but then as he does so, Billy changes the doll back so that he gets his voice. And so Billy transforms into Shazam and Constantine de-transforms. And he's like, cool. So what was that about, Constantine? And Constantine's like, yeah, okay, here's the thing. I don't know you. You're a new player on the field. I don't know you. Therefore, I could not trust you. So I had to do that just to be sure. But you just saved my life. So I owe you one. So here's what I'm going to tell you. And you listen to me closely. If you come across Pandora's box, don't open it. Don't even try. Because if you try, you will kill everyone. That is super important. Don't do that. And he's like, all right, I hope we never meet again, Constantine, because you're kind of a dick. Peace. And Shazam just walks out. At that point, we see that during the fight, Constantine got hit hard, and he's got a hole in his stomach. So he falls down to the ground. Lloyd's like, oh, geez, no, I gotta fix you up. And he goes and gets a med kit. And as he's getting patched up by Lloyd, we see the ghost spirit, whatever, of Constantine floating above his body. And next to him is the ghost of Chris, the guy from issue 1 who Constantine let die. And he's like, hey, Constantine, looks like you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Time for payback. And he goes to strangle Constantine's ghost. So that's a lot going on there all at once. But honestly, I think this is a completely unnecessary tie-in to Trinity War. There's no reason this needed to happen, but it was fun. It was a fun little single-issue romp. I can't see any reason why it should be avoided. It's fine, but it's definitely one of those things where the marketing team was like, okay, hold on. We could sell more Constantine if we just say that this is a tie-in. But in reality, this could have been put in wherever. They just used Trinity War as an excuse. But it's not bad. Art-wise, fine. Continuing the plot, fine. I really didn't have any issue with this issue, but it is just kind of a little bit of that slimy feeling to it, where it's like, oh yeah, this didn't need to exist as a tie-in, but it was still fun. So overall, I'm going to give it I'll give it a 7.5. it's good. It's a good issue. I do like almost all aspects about it, but it just doesn't quite cross over into that great territory. So I don't even know if next issue's still a tie-in or not. I don't think so, but I guess we'll see. Batman The Dark Knight number 22, written by Gregg Hurwitz, art by Alex Maleev. So, pretty much the start of a new arc here. The only thing you got to remember is that last arc, Natalia died. So, that's still something that matters, I guess. But this one focuses, at least at first, on Commissioner Gordon. And obviously, he's like, you know what? Everyone's got their breaking point. I live in Gotham, a city designed to break people down. I lost my wife, my daughter was paralyzed and then came back, and then my son more recently than not died. So yeah, I'm having a hard time of things, and I'm nearing that breaking point. And we see Gordon arrive at this jewelry store holdup that turned into a hostage situation, and they've just got a security guard as a hostage, but they're trying to talk it down. The big thing, though, is that Clayface has returned. He is showing up again, and they're trying to get a read on where he is, but he's made a couple of heists like this, and so they think that he's also behind this one as well. So at that point, Gordon, he just pulls out the bullhorn. He's like, hey, I'll take the place security guard. Let me in. And Bullock's like, are you serious, man? He's like, yeah, no, totally. And Gordon takes off his jacket, showing that he has 2 handguns taped to his back, and he's like, I really have reached my breaking point. So he walks in, they change places with the security guard, and as he gets in there, he just reaches behind his back, pulls out the guns, and starts shooting all the gunmen. And the gunmen are like, okay, Jesus Christ, I give up. You're crazy, man. And Gordon takes his gun, aims it back at him, and shoots him in the chest. And Batman just showed up, and he's like, what did you tell me? I didn't see that. What are you doing? And Gordon turns around, takes the gun, tries shooting Batman. And Batman, knowing better, lands a solid punch against Gordon's face, enough to disrupt Clayface, who's taking Gordon's place. And Clayface is like, Batman's like, Clayface, why did you just kill your own men? And so Clayface then transforms into Natalia and says, I don't know, Batman, why didn't you save me? And he's like, oh God. So she lands a punch on Batman, and then Clayface goes down into a storm drain as all the cops move in. And it's like, oh, that wasn't Gordon, that was Clayface. Okay, well, why did he kill his own men? And Batman's like, I don't know, I'm still kind of recovering from that last thing. Also, he could be anywhere now. Like, I have no trace on him whatsoever. So we cut back to the Batcave, and we see Bruce is like, okay, he's just talking to Alfred, and he's just logicking through, like, the big question is, Commissioner Gordon is not responding. He's missing. Clayface took him, so where's the real Commissioner Gordon? And he realizes that now that the Commissioner Gordon identity is revealed, Clayface can't use him anymore, so therefore he can be disposed of. And we see Gordon is in a theater tied to a chair, and he's doing his best to try to escape. And he falls down off his chair and pulls the tarp accidentally off of a spotlight, wouldn't you know it. So Bruce is trying to figure out any way at all that he can track down Clayface, like heat imaging or anything like that. Nothing's working, but he calls up Lucius and says, hey, remember that thing we used in, it was just normal Batman when they fought Clayface there for like 2 issues? Yeah, it's a big cage. I need it mobile. I need to be able to take it wherever. And Lucius is like, oh, okay, yeah, that'll be super easy. Thanks. So at that point, Alfred makes the point of, hey, yeah, no, Gordon's important, but here's a question. Who told him about Natalia? It seems to me like this isn't Clayface's normal MO, so we should probably focus on that as well. And Bruce is like, yeah, okay, thank you. I don't really want to think about her right now. And Alfred's like, hey, okay, do we need to have this talk again? Like, it's okay to open up to people and try to make a better life for yourself. Batman's like, no, I'm going to bury it down and brood. And Alfred's like, okay, great, cool, thanks. Anyway, I'll let you know when we get anything on the computer. You just go do your thing. So we see Gordon, he manages to free himself from a couple of his shackles. He is still chained to the floor, though. And he goes over to the spotlight and tears off pieces of paper and tarp and whatnot. and does a makeshift bat signal that he then goes to plug in. So Batman's up in the top floor of Wayne Manor, and he's brooding over Natalia as he looks out the window and sees the makeshift bat signal. And he's like, oh, geez, well, only one man I know would do that. So he immediately flies over with the jet and busts in and finds Gordon. And he's like, hey, awesome, great. So this is one of Clayface's safe houses, and I really want to get you out of here, but we need to at least search for clues around here. And as they look around, all they see is, some posters for Basil Carlo. He's a narcissist, but he's also a master of disguise. So Batman takes Gordon out the back way because a bunch of people have gathered outside seeing the makeshift bat signal coming from the house. And he's like, it could be any one of them. He could be out there. He could come and get you right now. And so he takes him off the side, takes him in the bat jet, and everyone's like, oh, man, just missed him. But we see this one woman who's scowling nearby, and she continues to walk away staring at the bat jet. And we see that one is Clayface as his disguise falters for a moment. And that's the intro. So I'm just going to say this right now, so I don't have to say it in more detail. Alex Maleev's art, fantastic. It is absolutely perfect for the feeling that this book is going for. This sense of unease and darkness and just this hideous underbelly. I love it. The art style is perfect here. I don't understand why this book does so well with artists. I mean, the writing's fine too, don't get me wrong. It's setting up this great mystery. It's setting up this paranoia to it. I'm down for that. But this book has consistently gotten fantastic artists pretty much the whole way through, and I just don't understand it. Overall, I would say this issue probably ranks at about an 8. I really do enjoy it. I think it did cross over into really promising territory. Mind you, I think that it comes down to how they're going to execute. I think that the Gordon stuff at the beginning was a great eye catch, but beyond that, if this whole story is just going to be more of Batman brooding over Natalia, count me out. If it's going to have more than that, especially with this paranoia ideal to it, I'm in. So 8 for this, contingent on how are they going to play it up after this. Catwoman number 22, written by Nocenti, art by Rafa, Sandoval, and Scott McDaniel. So last issue, Penguin v. Catwoman, there was a whole big sinkhole that opened up inside of Gotham, and Catwoman's friend named Rat Tail fell down inside of it. This issue, she's mourning him, and as is the whole community. He was such a cool stand-up dude, and Catwoman even says oh, I'm not even thinking about attacking Penguin. All that's said and done with, which I don't think it was, but regardless, hey, whatever. So it turns out that the Gotham City is filling up the sinkhole with cement, and she's like, yep, even if he was down there's no way I could get him out now. And she tosses a jewel down there, and it's like, I've got to go find him and bring him back alive. So then we get what happened with one of Penguin's goons named Volt, who got electricity powers last time. He's still around. He got out of the ocean or whatever and is now just craving electricity wherever he can. Just be aware that's happening, I guess. But then Catwoman's like, okay, if I want to go into the underground, I need technology, and that means I have to go to this new character that we created 2 issues ago named Alice. So goes up to Alice, and she's like, yeah, no, I've got some thermal imaging. I've got a GPS for your wrist. I've got holograms and whatnot, and all of it's for you. And she's like, cool, what's the catch? And she's like, I want you to go to a nearby funeral home that uses a process that condenses people's ashes into diamonds and get me one of those diamonds, because I think they're neat. So Catwoman does exactly that, and she uses her newfound techno stuff to show oh, there's a secret compartment behind this wall or whatever, and she manages to get into the funeral parlor. There's a guy there who, after literally 9 words, Catwoman says, you must be one of those paranoid anti-government nut jobs. And you'd think maybe the 9 words were something like, the government's coming to take your money or something. But no, the 9 words are, get out, you can't let your guard down, ever. That's it. Those are all the words. So I don't know where we got anti-government, but regardless, she punches this guy because he's apparently security for this place. And he makes the point here of like, oh, you never know when it's going to happen. It can crawl out of a lab, or it can come out of space, or a nuclear slag heap, but it's going to happen, Catwoman. And she's like, yeah, okay, I'm taking the diamonds. So she takes one, delivers it to Alice. Alice shows her this huge, like, underground map that they have from, like, old historical documents and such like that, but it's very incomplete. And Catwoman even remarks, like, this doesn't even have that giant underground pit that I found underneath of Arkham. Guess I'll start there, which makes you wonder why she even bothers with the map if she does not have it mapped on the... Regardless, so she grabs that, and she... By the way, there's this, in case it comes up later, Alice has a cat that Catwoman says is ugly, and the ugly cat follows Catwoman around everywhere, including on this trip. So, yeah. So anyway, they go down into this underground place that she found underneath Arkham, and the compass keeps on, it at least keeps her aimed in the right direction so she can walk towards where the sinkhole was. And as she makes her way down, she's jumped by a bunch of what seems to be outstretched metallic arms. And then we cut back upstairs where Gwen and, not Spark, Trip, the guy who was giving Catwoman some deals. Gwen feels guilty for betraying Catwoman. Trip apparently also betrayed her, I guess. He saw her with Batman and then just says, and then I did bad things. But regardless, Trip is like ripping into Gwen, and Gwen's like, oh, I need to find her and to forgive me. So that is, I guess, a thing happening as well. Meanwhile, in the underground, we get introduced to this little town of misfits and superhero people named Charnel Town. And one of the people here is Dr. Phosphorus, who has a daughter named Tinderbox. And Tinderbox wants to get married. And Dr. Phosphorus says, I ain't never letting you leave Charnel Town. And she's like, damn you, daddy, let me find love. And he's just like, psh, nah, you're going to stay right here for the rest of your life, or I will marry you off to any man that will beat you. So, yeah, he's cool. Anyway, there's a disruption outside. Turns out Catwoman stumbled into Charnel Town. All the normal people there start, like, tying her up and about to hang her. And Dr. Foster was like, oh, hey, guys, let's not do this to literally the first person who's dropped down here in years. So sorry about them. They're a little bit crazy. And Catwoman's like, gotta fight first, and just slashes at Dr. Phosphorus. And he's like, okay, I was genuinely trying to be kind to you here, but you know what? You're being a bitch. So he takes her down with his phosphorus powers, and as he's about to like melt her gas mask that she's wearing to breathe down here, she's like, okay, Uncle, you win. What do you want? And he's like, oh, okay. There's a place down here called Rock Bottom. And there are 3 different cities down here. One belongs to me, one belongs to the Warhogs, and one belongs to some other place that I genuinely cannot be bothered to find it. The Nethers. Nobody's supposed to go there. It's neutral ground. I think that somebody is going in there. Go spy on that. And also take my daughter and offer her hand in marriage to the Warhogs so that we may unite our tribes or whatever. And she's like, oh, thank you, Daddy. I can't wait to get married. And so they take some horses, and Catwoman's like, oh, by the way, a guy fell down here. I'm looking for him. He has a rat tail. And Phosphorus is like, if he fell down here, that's miles. He's dead. But I'll search for his body, I guess. So Catwoman gets 2 horses wearing gas masks and takes this woman with fire powers to get married with this ugly cat in tow. Remember how last issue she was in a war with the Penguin? You remember that? It felt like ages ago. I don't even know where to begin. This book has ADD. Like, it's not even, it's super undiagnosed, but definitely there. It's so weird, all the places we're jumping to. And like, I get it that this technically does follow a through line of, okay, she's looking for this guy. But this guy didn't exist like 3 issues ago. Like, we just got introduced to him, and now he's like, no, I have to go find him. And I understand that the nature of comics is that you're constantly going to be introduced to new characters that you're just supposed to accept and find them here. But like, No, it's too much. We're doing too much. Not to say this was a poorly written issue. If anything, this was probably one of the better written issues in terms of me understanding it in like a year. But it's still not good. It's not a good time. So overall, I got to give this one I'll give it a straight 5. And that is it pulling out all of its favors in terms of it being a decently written issue and the art was not bad. But that's it. That's all I can give it. It's just a straight 5. Because as soon as I start thinking about it more, why are these horses wearing gas masks? Are you telling me they were born and raised down here in this pit on gas masks? I don't... 5. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 22, written by James Tynion IV, art by Julius Gopez. So last issue, Roy agreed to work with the Untitled to save Jason. Jason agreed to work with the League of Assassins because, well, he didn't agree, but he's brought in, and Starfire went her own way. So this issue picks up with Roy, who's just messing with a whole bunch of technology for the Untitled, and they seem to be looking on very eagerly. We will get back to them. But then we go to Jason and the League of Assassins, and if you remember last issue, Jason was supposed to lead. Bronze Tiger's like, hey, lead us. That's totally your job now. And Jason's like, I don't want to do that, I don't think. I don't know. It's kind of a weird time in my life. And he basically lays out like, yeah, no, but like, I don't know anything about what's going on, and I don't see why leading an army of killers is going to get me on the righteous path. And Bronze Tiger's like, okay, let me show you what's going on out there. Then we cut over to Starfire, who's in the South Pacific. She's built a machine that is able to just pull essence to her. She's just here. And Essence is like, don't do that. I don't like that. And so she starts blasting at Starfire, and Starfire's like, blasted me? How dare you? I just wanted to talk, but I'll blast you back. And so they start fighting for absolutely no reason. But we see that Starfire manages to get her down on the ground, and it's just like, look, here's the thing. I know you care about Jason. I could feel it. I could sense it in the air. Why is he so important to this whole, why is the League of Assassins and all that stuff involved? I just want to know what's going on. And then she reveals like Roy is working with the Untitled, and Essence like, I told you not to do that. And she's like, that's why I didn't do that. But he's just got his own thing because you're not telling us anything. So at that point, Essence says like, okay, yes, that's very bad. They could take over the world because of Roy. So let me walk you through it. But first we go back to the League of Assassins, and we see Bronze Tiger walking Jason down the Market of Death, which is just a normal market that sells deadly things. And he's like, oh, geez, no, this is awful. We see Cheshire coming out of a tent after apparently having killed 3 men, possibly after having sex with them. It's implied, but not very strongly. And she's still wearing the trucker cap that she stole from Roy during, I think that was the annual. So she's apparently terrifying in her own right. And then we see Shiva is lambasting all of these man-bats who are being used for the League of Assassins. And she throws some shurikens and just kills them all. And they're like, Shiva, we're actually running low on man-bats because you keep on killing them for making minor mistakes. She's like, good. They sucked anyway. So at that point, it's revealed that one of them, Rictus, is keeping the defense secure for the entire town or whatnot, but they need special security on this fountain of Ra's al Ghul in the middle, and that's because it's super duper special, but they are not revealing exactly how it's special. But Jason asks, and he's like, all right, I'll tell you how. But first, we have Rictus saying, don't worry, they won't even get inside. It would take a blast of 400 terawatts to even break through the walls. Smash cut to Roy building this weapon saying, okay, I got this thing up to 600 terawatts, and I think that's probably the limit. And the Untitled are like, that's pretty sweet, man. You're doing a good job. Here's the thing. we will honor our deal. We will let you get Jason out of there, and you guys can live happily ever after as a gay couple in Massachusetts or whatever. But that's only if you bust through the walls and destroy the seal on top of the fountain. Those are both the important things. After that, do whatever you want. If you don't do those, we'll kill you and your friend. And Roy's like, sounds good, partner. So then Essence breaks down the entire mythology. So, in order to sum it up as basically as I can, as we already had revealed, there was a thing called the Well of Sins. The Untitled drank from it. It gave them their immortality, but also made them dark evil beings. The Ra's al Ghul from the League of Assassins approached Mother Dukra, trying to figure out more about the Lazarus pits he's been using. Dukra said sure, he weaseled his way in. They discovered that the Well of Sins is basically the first Lazarus pit, but it's super duper evil and is never to be used. And Ra's said, I am going to make a deal with you. The All Caste and the League of Assassins will be partners, buddies, will be in league with each other. I will guard the fountain with my assassins. I will make sure nothing bad ever comes to it, and therefore you and I will be all cool. Sound good? And said, yeah, sure. But because the Untitled killed Mother Dukra, now the League of Assassins like, well, they're tipping the balance. They're going to be coming after it. We have to be on high alert. And so the only way to defeat the Untitled is to go after the Well of Sins. That's the reason the Untitled are going after it in the first place, in order to make sure that nothing ever happens to it. But, it's going to have its own thing. So anyway, Essence says like, yeah, no, I kept my powers, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. But nobody has the knowledge of how to take out the Well of Sins. Like, nobody knows how to do it. But if Roy gets in there and destroys the seal, then the Untitled can definitely use the Well of Sins to take over the rest of the world. Starfire's like, fair enough, let's go. And she's like, this is most likely going to result in you either killing Jason or Roy. You cool with that? And Starfire's like, how could I be? So we cut back to the League of Assassins. They're telling Jason, like, yeah, here's the deal. Here's the reason that we want you to be in charge. Talia said that if this were to ever happen, that the Untitled come, you are the only one who's going to be able to stop it. And you'll know what to do. And he's like, well, hate to disappoint you there, buddy, but I literally don't know anything. And everyone's like, we're all going to die, aren't we? And of course, at that moment, they get an alert. There's someone outside with intense energy, but the Untitled are nearby, but this guy is not. And they realize like, oh, geez, it's him. And standing outside is the most 90s image I've ever seen in my life. Loaded to the teeth with knives, guns, arrows, and katanas is Arsenal, saying, all right, buddy, the cavalry's arrived. Oh, it's so dumb. I like it. I think this was, the explanation issue. I really appreciate Tynion is reaching all the way back to issue 1, back when it was written by Lobdell, and is saying, here's how it all fits together. You never really got a good explanation of like, oh, why are they fighting, and why are these fighting, and how are the League of Assassins involved? We get it now. We understand. We see all the different ways it's all matched up, and masterfully done to fit all of those square pieces into round holes. Very well done. That being said, I think that while there is a good story here, it is kind of bogged down in its own lore, if that makes sense. Like, we had to spend an entire issue here not only explaining the Untitled, the history of them again, how they connect to the League of Assassins, what the League of Assassins' own deal is. Like, there's a lot that it has to get out of the way. And I'm glad it all did it just in one issue here, just one fell swoop. But that does come at the detriment to this one issue. While I appreciate how well done it is still just an issue of nothing but exposition. So I'm going to deduct a point or two for that, but regardless, it is a good story being told overall. So I'll give this one a 6.5 in the general sense, but I am looking forward to that insane, what should be a poster of the 90s that is Arsenal breaking into this city. Talon number 10, written by James Tynion IV, art by Miguel Sepulveda and Szymon Kudranski. So last issue, Talon busted in, like airdropped into Bane's island. He's sneaking around, he found Sebastian, and then he got attacked by a big old dude named Wolf Spider. So that's happening. Meanwhile, back at base here, we have Sarah still getting brainwashed by the Court of Owls, and Casey is forced to watch by the Butcher, and just like, yeah, we're doing great at reprogramming her. She already gave up something about like a DNA encoded backup of your father's plans. So as it turns out, we don't need you anymore. And she's like, fine, whatever, do it, kill me. And he's like, oh, no, we're not going to kill you right now. I got permission to wait until Calvin returns or until we find out he's dead. And then I'm going to kill you. So that's going to be fun. So just wait on that. And so he leaves. We cut back to the island where Talon is being attacked by Wolf Spider. And Wolf Spider just immediately is just like, you want to know how I got my powers? And Talon's like, no, I don't care at all. He's like, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you how I got my powers. I was a runner, so I didn't want to be big and bulky like Bane with the venom. So I convinced the good doctor here to break my bones and let them reform to make me even faster. And Calvin again says, I don't care, tries busting out a window, but Wolf Spider grabs hold of him, throws him down to the ground, and just crushes his head into the dirt. And just like, well, rub my hands, that was easy. So we see Bane is about to ship off with a bunch of warships, and Sebastian comes up and he's like, Bane, you gotta help me, man. Calvin, he's here, he's gonna kill us. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. No, he's not gonna kill me. I'm Bane, for God's sakes. And look around you, I've got my army. I don't care about your stupid little Talon problem. So he raises the army and is just like, oh, tonight we leave for Gotham. It is mine. I take my place, whatever. And then he looks over at Sebastian and is like, fine, all right, let's go take care of your stupid little Talon problem. So we see Wolf Spider reporting that Calvin was there, and he's like, yeah, he's here, I dealt with him, no big deal. But then of course Calvin is functionally immortal, so he gets up and he's like, I barely felt any of that. Round 2, baby. So cut back to the Gotham Public Library, which apparently has the Court of Owls thing underneath of it. I think they showed that before, but I completely forgot about it. And as the Butcher arrives, turns out Casey escaped. She managed to get out of her restraints. She goes up through a tunnel, great thing, into the library as some teenagers are making out. And it's like, oh, don't let me interrupt you. I'm just gonna head out over here. So we see Calvin fighting against Wolf Spider, but as he has a knife against his throat, a bunch of Bane's army men appear and start aiming their guns at Calvin. And Wolf Spider's like, see, this is Bane's army. You can't go up against us. We're too strong and stuff. We will storm the breaches of Gotham City. We'll deliver it to Bane. And then one of the guards comes up and slices all of the venom delivering tubes to Wolf Spider. And it turns out that these guards are maybe not actually guards. It's hard to say whether they're coming out of nowhere or whether they were the guards in disguise. But it's the criminals and the misfits from before. We got Anya, we got Joey, we got Edgar, all these people here to save Talon. But then Wolf Spider gets back up and he's like, oh, this isn't over. And then all of a sudden they just immediately take him out, knock him down. Right here is also where we have the very sudden art shift over to Szymon Kudranski. I like both art styles going on here. I probably prefer Zymon's Calvin to the other guy. I forgot who it was already. Hold on. Miguel Sepulveda. Just a taste thing. I like Kudranski's art a lot. So anyway, they say like, okay, first off, how did you guys even get on the island? It's like, yeah, no, we were supposed to rescue someone from this island like months ago and we had plans made up that didn't involve airdropping like an idiot. And Talon's like, ouch, okay, fair enough. So anyway, cut back to Casey. And she's trying to make her way out of the library, but two security guards who are obviously Talon's stop her and say like, Miss Washington, you're going to need to come with us. Wink. We still have your daughter. Don't forget that. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going to go with you and you're not going to start anything because if something gets started on top of the biggest base in New York, you're going to have, or in Gotham, you're going to have a real big problem. And they call her bluff. They start going after her. She grabs one of their guns, fires in the air, which attracts a real police officer who's nearby. And police officer's like, lady, you are so under arrest. And they're like, officer, we can take care of that. And it's like, you guys are rent-a-cops. I'm an actual cop. Get out of here with that. So she smiles as she's being put in the cuffs and being like, well, ta-ta, boys. I'll be safe and sound in lockup. So at that point, we see that the Morse code tooth thing that we introduced last issue is going off again. And Casey's updating them like, I'm free of the court, but they still have my daughter. We got to do something about it. And Calvin's like, oh, she's still alive. Oh my God, I'm so happy. But then that's immediately interrupted by Bane and his crew showing up being like, oh, I wouldn't be so happy just quite yet because your troubles are just getting started. So yeah, it's fine. It's a good enough issue. It brings together a couple threads there. It forwards Casey's plot, which I was a bit worried about, that she was just going to be trapped in there for an extended period of time and only use the lockpicks that she got from Calvin like at the very end. But I'm glad she's out and about and we're doing something about that. In terms of the Sebastian plot, I don't know. It's like, obviously it ties directly in with the Bane plot, but it just seems like it's more focused on Bane than it is Sebastian right now. And that's not an inherently bad thing, but it does feel like we kind of just left that one dangling. Maybe we'll get back to it. Maybe Sebastian will get his comeuppance. I don't know. Overall, though, I would say that this one is probably just a 7. It's good. I think, you know what? I'm going to have to bring it down to 6.5 now because of that art shift. That's worth half a point in that it was very jarring. It was very sudden. It didn't quite flow for me, to the point where I wasn't even sure I was looking at Wolf Spider when he came back the second time. So 6.5, but it is still an enjoyable issue for the most part. And it does feel like we are ramping up to a at least interesting fight. And obviously the Court of Owls have to be taken down yet another peg somehow. So we'll see how that happens. Batman Superman number 2, written by Gregg Pak, art by Jay Lee. So last issue, very early days, Batman and Superman got into a fight and they were somehow teleported, where Superman fought against a Batman that seemingly knew him and was aware of him, and then Pa Kent showed up. So a lot going on. This issue, we get introduced to the villain behind it, named the Chaos Bringer, aka Kaio, and just wanting to have some fun, just taking early days Batman and Superman and just putting them in a different reality where they have known each other for quite some time. And we open up with Batman being teleported into Wayne Manor, more or less, into the Batcave. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. I shouldn't be able to be teleported. Nobody should know that this is here. Crap, someone knows my secret identity. This is not cool. And then he was like, okay, but I was fighting Catwoman, and Catwoman doesn't know how to teleport, so that shouldn't be a worry. And then Catwoman shows up right next to him and is just like, oh, hello, dear. And just, how's it going? And he's like, okay, apparently she does know how to teleport. So he starts trying to fight her. She knows all of his moves, and he's like, that's impossible. No one should be able to fight like that. But then he looks over on a nearby desk or something and sees a wedding photo, and she's like, oh, what's next, my husband? And it's like, okay, it's clearly we've traveled to a different world and I just need to evaluate this. Cut back to Smallville, where Superman, not doing so good of a job of piecing that together. Pa Kent's like, okay, I don't know who you are. You look like my son, in a t-shirt for some reason, but regardless, I know you're not, because my son would never beat up his good friend. And he looks down at Batman, and Superman feels this shame in him, and he's like, my parents are dead. This upsets me. And so he goes back down, he like grips Batman by the neck. He's like, what are you doing to me? How did you do this? What do you want from me? And Batman's like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm out. And so he boom tubes out. And Superman's like, you can't run away from me. And then all of a sudden they hear this sonic boom, and dropping down from the sky is Superman of this world saying, getting the hell away from my parents. He doesn't say hell, but he says, get away from my parents. So Batman, we see him boom tube back to his cave, and he looks around and he sees like some other stuff, and he's like, okay, there's a duplicate of me as well here, so that's a problem. But as he looks around, he sees Kaio, he sees Chaos Bringer, and he's like, wait, hold on, stop. And Kaio just disappears, and it's like, okay, well, that was weird. So then he comes across Catwoman and Batman and I have no better way of naming them, New Batman and Old Batman, or Batman and New Batman, or Old Batman. So confusing. Regardless, Catwoman's tied up, and New 52 Batman starts immediately fighting, and Old Batman is also like, yeah, no, you tied up my wife. What's wrong with you? So they start fighting each other, and Catwoman's like, actually, I had this all under control. You don't have to. Okay, yeah, boys will be boys, I guess. So the Batmans realize that they know each other's fighting styles perfectly. And while New 52 Bruce is a bit greener and is not as experienced, Old Batman is older and therefore not as quick. And so at that point, New 52 is like, hey, my dad told me a bedtime story every night for a month when I was 5 years old. What was it? And Old Batman says the right answer, and he's like, okay. So yeah, we can establish we're the same person now. Is this time travel, or is it an alternate world, or maybe magic? And they're just immediately on the same page. And New 52 Batman's like, by the way, I was teleported here. I was fighting a red and blue monster, and he's so strong, and if he's here as well, you got to take care of him. And Batman's like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, I got a friend taking care of that one. So we see New 52 Superman walking up to old Superman saying like, who the hell are you? And old Superman's like, language. And then just as he gets in his face, just pushes him back, and he falls down to the ground. We see Martha and Pa Kent are telling him like, oh, boys, stop fighting. Like, this is nothing. And so Martha walks in to the New 52 Superman just being like, oh, I'd recognize my son anywhere. And old Superman's like, Ma, he might be dangerous. And like, oh, hush. I think that he just lost something. Did you lose your parents earlier? Like, are we gone in your world? And other Superman's like, yes. Oh, God, Mommy. So we see the Waynes having dinner along with Catwoman. We see Mom, Pa Kent sharing a moment with New 52 Superman. And then we see them basically exploring the world. And it's revealed that old Batman basically cleaned up Gotham. He didn't kill his villains, but they're put on ice. They're all cryogenically frozen. And they've actually replaced Arkham Asylum with an amusement park, which Batman's like, that might have been a bit far, but you know what? The kids love it. And we see old Superman is flying around, whereas New 52 Superman at this point still takes leaps and bounds. And Superman's like, do you want to lift? And New 50 Superman's like, nah, I'm good, thanks. So they see that there are some giant Wayne Tech robots that New 52 Superman's scared of. And it's like, no. They're cool. They're building things. They run off solar energy. Like, this place rocks. We've solved crime. This is far distant in the future. And they arrive on top of the Daily Planet, and we see Lois Lane is there. And Lois is like, yeah, no, you're married to me. I just wanted to see an alternate version of my husband. And Clark from New 52 is like, oh, we're married? Oh, in my world, we're just friends. And he's like, oh, well, that's lame. Who are you dating then? And he's like, no one. I mean, I guess. And then all of a sudden, on a flying Pegasus, in comes Wonder Woman saying, hey, what did I miss? And New 52 Superman's like, oh, hubba, what's going on there? And Lois turns to her husband and is just like, oh, we're going to talk about this later. Superman's like, he's not me. Okay, yeah, no, I get it. So then at that point, Wonder Woman gets off her Pegasus, takes her sword that she has, and shoves it through Lois Lane's chest. And it turns out that she's able to see that this is actually the Chaos Bringer or whatever. And she's like, oh, you've just picked a fight with a god, Wonder Woman. So here's the thing. I enjoy Jay Lee's art for the most part, but only once I understand what's happening. Because there are many sequences in this where, like on the first read through, as I'm trying to get a grip on it, it did nothing but confuse me more. And then going back and reading it, I was like, oh, okay, that's this Superman, or this is like this thing he's looking at. It doesn't do the book any favors. I will say that it looks great once you get it. But it's very hard to get a grip on like what all is happening and what characters are who. Lois and Catwoman are identical. They're just 100% the same person. So there are problems with the art, but it is good. In terms of the story, I don't even want to begin to understand what's happening yet. I mean, clearly they've been teleported to some world, possibly pre-New 52, maybe future. I don't know. We'll see what happens when we get there, but overall, I'm into it. I think this does a lot more to explain what was happening last issue, because clearly we barely got a glimpse of that last time. And I'm into this story now. I'm super excited to see where it goes. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'll give it an 8. I think that it is a solid story being told, and I look forward to seeing what happens with Chaos Bringer, or whatever her name is. Hold on. Yeah, Chaos Bringer. I got it. It's an 8. Superman number 22, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Eddy Barrows, Daniel HDR, and Geraldo Borges. Last issue, we had a whole thing with Superman, like his friends or whatever were getting aspects of his personality, and then there was a Hive Queen who abducted Hector Hammond, but Hector Hammond maybe took control. So this issue picks up with Hector being held at gunpoint because he obviously was like threatening the Hive Queen and trying to take control. And he's like, Uncle, I give up. And the Hive Queen is like, oh, Hector, don't you understand? You're just a tool. You're to be used by us. Like, you're a prisoner. And then Hector's like, oh, geez, can we maybe have a compromise? I don't know. I'm impressed by the size of your operations here. You've got such a wonderful place. If only you would just let me, psych. And then he just launches an attack on the Hive Queen, and it's apparently all the soldiers were just mental projections, and Hector's like, you idiot, none of them even had any like backstory or memories. Like, I knew they were all fake from the get-go. How dare you think you can pull that over on me, Hector Hammond? And so he pulls her up and is just like, now I'm going to take care of your operation here. I'm going to take control of it, and I'm going to play with all the toys that you've made. And the Hive Queen's like, this isn't a game. This is war. And then we get Superman. And Superman's just standing on the edge of a city and just like, boy, I'm not prepared to fight anything with like psychic powers. I'm so strong and I can punch things and incinerate things, but I don't know how I'm supposed to be able to deal with a psychic threat. And he goes through everything that's happened since Scott Lobdell started writing this book. And he's like, okay, well, time to become Clark Kent. And he puts on his outfit and he's like, oh, I even have X-ray vision. And I can't, that can't even help me because the brain is more complicated than just the electrical impulses inside of it. And he sits down on a bench, and Kat Grant, who is, of course, doing a website with him, comes up, and she's got an empty coffee cup with never had anything in it, and she's wearing cheaper shampoo, according to Superman's super senses, and just be like, geez, she's really sunk everything into this site we've got going on, and I haven't done anything but play it off as a joke. She really does believe in this. I need to stop being such a dick. And so he says to her, like, look, I do have a story in the works. Have you heard something about the 20? And we get the explanation that the 20 are 20 people who went missing all the way back during Brainiac's, like, bottling of Metropolis. And they're missing persons or whatever. And apparently one of them is a guy named Grimm, who, if I'm remembering correctly, is a villain from, like, a single issue of Teen Titans. Also written by Scott Lobdell. So at that point, Kat's like, oh my God, thank you, Clark, you're the best. Solving the 20 mystery would be the greatest thing ever. So, yeah. Then we go back to Hector Hammond, who is looking through the computers of Hive Queen. And as he's doing so, and he's like, oh man, this is actually pretty cool stuff. I'm super into this. But then the sentries activate and they start firing at Hector, and he is killed. But it turns out that was all an illusion as well. The Hive Queen actually did manage to bamboozle Hector long enough that she could slink down into the sewer system beneath, which is apparently a labyrinth that was designed by her, and so there's no way that anyone could find her. And she's like, whatever, let her run. I now claim control of Hive. Me, Hector Hammond. And everyone's like, hail, Hector. So then we see the Hive Queen go down into the sewers and just like, I'm so sorry, my father. I was waiting for your return, and now I've jeopardized everything. I will raise the city to the ground if that's what it takes. So then we go to Superman, who flies up to Jimmy Olsen, who, reminder, is rich now because his parents died. And he's just lounging in a swimming pool in his living room, a full in-ground swimming pool, mind you. And as Superman comes up, he's like, "Oh, hey, Superman, yeah, Jeeves, get me out of the water." And Superman's like, "Hey, yeah, Jimmy, just wanted to say that I'm sorry about the death of your parents." He's like, "What are you talking about? My parents aren't dead." And he's like, "You said they were dead last issue." I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I was going through some weird psychic stuff, wasn't I?" "Yeah, no, it turns out my parents just went missing for 3 months, and because of their estate stuff, that means that I take control of their sizable fortune." And Superman's like, "Yes, that makes perfect sense, Jimmy. Your parents were always recluses, and now you have all of this money." Anyway, the ground started rumbling, and Superman's like, "Oh, geez, what's that? Gotta go check on it." So he goes down, and he sees out of all the buildings in the city come these tentacle wire looking things. And he's like, "Oh, gee, I've seen these before. Where have I seen these before?" And it turns out he immediately remembers, wait a minute, crap, these were Brainiac tubes. When he was invading, they were the whole metal tube things. So he's like, "All right, look, I got to pull him up from the roots and toss him in the sun. It's the only way to deal with this." But before he can do anything, he's attacked psychically. Oh, darn, if only he had a defense against that. And he tumbles to the ground. And we see the Hive Queen come up, and she says, "Oh, he should have never left us on Earth, the 20. So Hive Queen is one of the 20. And it's like, "Oh, we're so much stronger than he could have imagined, but I'm preparing the city for his return. Superman, Brainiac will be back soon, and we're going to be ready to welcome him." And we see Hector is looking on via hologram, and he's like, "That will not do." So over in Action Comics, we had an issue where Hector Hammond is already in control of Hive, and he is up in space, and he is looking at this ship, and I was immediately confused, because as I was reading the book, I was like, wait a minute, isn't Hector Hammond in the Superman book? And it's implied in that book that, like, okay, because we go to Action where he's in control of things, as soon as he shows up in the last issue and says, "I'm in control of things," you expect that to be it. You just say, like, "Oh, okay, yeah, he's in control of things now." But then we come back to this issue, and this issue says, "Oh, actually, no, he just got in control of things." Which means that Action was set after this issue, but there's nothing in either Action or Superman that says read them in that order. So, like, what in the hell are the editors doing? And more importantly, Scott Lobdell is writing both books. He could have easily have restructured this to make sense, but no, he decided, no, screw you. If you're reading one or the other, they have it in front of you, like, screw you. I'm so upset with these books. And the worst part is that next week, I believe, let me check on that. Yes, next week marks part 1 of the Psy-War crossover event between Action Superman and Superboy. I'm so upset. I cannot even begin to express that. So, yeah, this was a book. It feels like we're retconning from issue to issue. Like, he writes an issue when he's drunk, and then he wakes up, realizes, oh, wait, none of that made sense with what I was going for, retcons half of it, and then gets drunk again for the other half. Like, why did Jimmy's parents not have to be dead? Like, why just turn that around immediately? I don't understand. It's just poor writing the whole way through, and it's getting an event. Ugh. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just get the rating on this and then end it. It's a 4. And I think that's a little bit harsh, but I stand by it because it's the culmination of it just being poor writing after poor writing. And this is how we introduce an event. This is the issue we get saying, the Psy-War has begun. Like, screw you, man. I'm so not okay with this. 4. Larfleeze number 2, written by Keith Giffen and JMD Mateus, art by Scott Collins. So last issue, Larfleeze gave his entire origin story, and then out from this portal in space proceeded a giant flame being called the Laird of the Hunt. And Larfleeze is like, "I'm going to beat you up and take your stuff." So this issue continues with, "I'm going to beat you up and take your stuff." And we see that the Laird of the Hunt comes from the universe beyond the creation points, which is something that is apparently unheard of or whatnot. And we see that his dog, his hound, is named Lou. And Lou is just sitting there talking to Stargrave. And Lou's totally cool. He's like, hey, yeah, sorry I tried to eat you. You know, it's a thing. My boss, Laird of the Hunt, he's super in on that. And it's like, yeah, no big deal, whatever. And they just talk. As the fight is continuing on in the background, these two just talk and explain, like, yeah, no, here's where my guy comes from. Over in our universe, he's this big hunter and whatnot, and he basically managed to destroy everything in his universe. So now he crossed over to this one, and he's going to start hunting things here. And it's like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. It's like, yeah, no, and he's totally going to kill Larfleeze to start. And Stargrave's like, well, you don't know. Larfleeze may be able to hold his own. It's like, yeah, but like not really. Come on, like, my master's barely begun at like 2% power here. So yeah, no, he's totally gonna knock out Larfleeze. And we see that there is a guy who is like delivering weapons to the Lord of the Hunt, and his name is Herb. And he is a professional lackey. He went to 3 years of college to become a lackey. And right now he's just taking a smoke break, telling him like, man, I got half a mind to leave this guy as a lackey and find somewhere else. And Lou's like, yeah, is there a lot of lackey jobs? He's like, yo, I got offers, man. I don't know what this dynamic is, but I really enjoy it. So anyway, the fight continues on. And we see that Herb is basically... Sorry, the Lou has to join in on the fight. Laird demands it, that he comes and attacks Larfleeze. And he ends up getting pretty beaten up by Larfleeze. Not killed, though, like the last one. And they even said the last one. It's like, oh, why did that last guy... He wasn't as cool as you, Lou. And it's like, yeah, that guy was a real, like, alpha male guy. Like, he was even growling and snarling whenever he talked to me. He's an ass. Don't worry about him. I'm glad he's gone. So, at this point, we do see that after he takes out Lou... Laird gets super pissed off, and he's like, all right, I've had enough of you. You've amused me enough. The hunt must end. So he pulls out this thing called a plasma snare that wraps up Larfleeze and shocks him into submission and takes him out. And Stargrave's like, oh, geez, okay, yeah, no, I guess you took out Larfleeze. And Lard's like, I'm sorry, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm no one. Don't even worry about me. I'm just here. And Herb's like, nah, he's not. He said he was with Larfleeze. He's his butler. And so Stargrave is now brought into a, I guess, new ownership with Laird. So we cut to 6 weeks later. They go all over the universe until finally Laird settles down on this volcano planet. And we discover that Stargrave is basically being brought in as a worker for Laird. And I do want to emphasize, the name is Laord. That's the best I can describe it, Laird. So at this point, he activates a bit of tech. It makes a new base of operations for him, because he's going to be going all over the universe, but he's still got to have a base to come back to. And so Lou is forced to stay outside because he is still a hound, but Stargrave is allowed in. And Lard's like, all right, your first task as my helper is you're going to skin my hunt trophies, and you're going to mount them in a diorama. And we see this huge vat of different bodies, and just be like, oh yes, of course, I'll get right on that. And as he makes his way in there, he looks and he's like, okay, this is horrific. And he describes how, like, he thinks he can get used to this even after being with Larfleeze, because of when he was a child, he had a hemorrhoid that just wouldn't quit. I had to be made aware of that, so now you have to be made aware of that. But regardless, he's like, Larfleeze might still be alive in this pile of dead corpses, so I may as well take a look. And so he dives deep into this corpse pit, throws up on himself, and he's like, oh, this is horrible. Oh, wait, hold on, I see him. And he grabs Larfleeze and pulls him out of the pit, and he's like, oh, well, now I can cut him free. And the voice from behind him says, what are you doing? And he's like, huh, what? Who are you? And this woman shows up. Her name is the Wanderer. And she's got like electric powers. Oh, yeah, there was a part earlier on where Larfleeze was clearly knocked out, and Stargrave is still alive. Like, he's still able to breathe. And Herb points it out. It's like, why are you still alive, bro? And he's like, oh, I thought Lard was making oxygen for me. And it's like, nah, man, you should be dead. I don't know why you're still alive. And he's like, yeah, that's weird. I don't know what's going on. Turns out it's the Wanderer. And the Wanderer's like, dude, I am keeping you alive and you are about to get yourself killed if you release Larfleeze. And he's like, what? Huh? What? Who are you? And she says, I'm the Wanderer. And we'll get that next issue. I love the dynamic here between Lou, Herb, and Stargrave. Like, they're so fun together. Like, I don't even care that Larfleeze is even in this book. Like, he is the least interesting part. If we focus solely on these three, I know this is a spin-off to a backup out of Threshold, but if we could get a backup with just those three and get a spin-off of that, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. It's just so stupid fun. It's like three work buddies, but their work is, dominating the universe. I love it. Beyond that, art is fine. Scott Collins is not my favorite, but it works for what the book is. Whatever we get with the Wanderer, I'm intrigued, but I gotta say, I hope we don't get pulled away from this dynamic they've built. It's only issue 2, but I really do enjoy it. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5 because it is still, it's good. I do enjoy this issue because it's just so out there in the way they handle it, but it is still just not only an exposition issue and still setting pieces up on the board, but it is also just not quite my taste in superhero books, but it's still fun. So 7.5, that's not too shabby. Aquaman number 22, written by Jeff Johns, art by Paul Pelletier. So last issue we had Aquaman finally coming across the dead king, and we have Scavenger attacking Atlantis. So those are the big two things, but first and foremost we deal with our little ground team of Merc, Tula, and SWAT, who are going to rescue Orm, and they've made their way up on land. They find a truck, and SWAT's like, it's a truck, it's a land vehicle, and Merc is like, it's just such a stupid name. They call things stupid names up here. I hate them all. And so they steal the truck, and they're like, yeah, we should be less than an hour out from grabbing Orm. But then we cut back to Aquaman, and he's talking to Dead King. Dead King's frozen, Mera, and a couple other Zebellians in ice. And he's like, hey, Aquaman, give me the trident and pledge your loyalty to the king. And he's like, hey, I think I might be confused with a few things here. You might be mistaking me. I am Arthur Curry, king of Atlantis, ruler of the seven seas. Who are you? And he's like, yeah, no, you are confused because I am king of Atlantis. And he's like, okay, well, help me understand. Like, what's going on? And Dead King says, all right, well, what do you know about me? Start with that. And he's like, well, you were the first king of Atlantis. You were responsible for forging the trident and all those other artifacts. And then on the day that Atlantis sank, you went deep into the city to save your family, and then you were caught up in the destruction, and you and your family died. And Dead King was like, okay, there's like a tiny bit of truth in that, but most of it was lies. And then Aquaman's like, okay, regardless of what's going to happen next, you got my girlfriend in the ice. I need you to let her out now. And he summons a bunch of sharks. And Dead King just immediately starts fighting him off, no problem. And just like, bro, I knew about your existence because of your telepathy. Don't try to use it against me. How dare you? But Aquaman uses his busyness with the sharks to break Mera out of the ice, and she's like, hey, no, I could hear his voice. He was about to tell you the whole truth about everything right before you broke me out. And he's like, yeah, that's great. I need you up and at him. Are you good? And she's like, yeah, no, I'm good. What's up? So then we cut back to Atlantis, where obviously Scavenger has launched his attack, and basically he's just waiting for Aquaman. He keeps on attacking, and he's going around. All of his guys are fighting Atlanteans, some of them more successfully than others. But he finds a map of Atlantis and like, okay, the throne room should be over here. That's where we're going. And so they make their way over. We see that the jail is being bombed. Not on purpose. They're just bombing it. And Volko manages to get out of his cell. He's free, and he's looking around like, where's Arthur? But then two of the guards find Volko, and they're like, we could kill him now and say he died in the explosion. There's no way that Arthur is going to put him to death. We could do it now and blame that. And they're stopped by seemingly the ruler of the guard named Ern. And Ern's like, go defend the city, you idiots. I'll take care of Volko. And Volko's like, thanks, Ern. He's like, don't think I did it because I like you. You suck. But laws are laws, and I'm going to defend the laws of Atlantis. So, tally-ho. So, we see Aquaman and Mera they're just going around Zebul trying to escape the dead king. And he's like, I can still hear you. I hear you talking about me. Stop talking about me. And so Aquaman's using his telepathy. He's looking for any sort of help he can get. But instead he's like, okay, I'm going to distract him. And he picks up this giant shipwreck and throws it into the dead king, saying, let's see who bows to who first, Grandpa. And Dead King is not even fazed by it. He's like, you're a poor king. Look, since you started, you haven't even been to Zebul. This is your first time here. And you nearly killed the Trench. You know nothing about what Atlantean kings are supposed to do. And that's because you don't know who you really are. And we see them, all out just trying to fight. Mera goes over to the other frozen Zebellians and unfreezes them. And Mera's like, hey, all right, look, I need your help and your people. And he's like, what do you mean, your people? They're our people. We're Zebellians. He's like, yeah, no, our people. Fine, whatever. The dead king. And he's like, yeah, no, we know about the dead king. The ice was talking to us. We understand it. We know everything about it. And the dead king says, here's the deal, Arthur. You're not of the royal bloodline. My bloodline. You're not a part of it. You were... So way back when I died, it wasn't because Atlantis was being destroyed. I was killed and the throne was taken from me. You are descendant of the usurpers. And your ancestors murdered my family with that trident that you're using. So at that point, we see Scavenger has reached the throne room and he's just sitting himself on the throne. And he's like, and now we wait for Aquaman. We see the Atlanteans going after Orm have arrived at Belle Reeve, so they're going to get him. And Mera's arrived with the Zebellians saying like, hey, dead king, you get away from because we're here and we're going to fight you. And then all the other Zebellians are like, no, we're going to kneel because he's the true king of Atlantis. So, yeah, a lot going on. I mean, I'm into it, but it still feels like I don't know the stakes really yet. It just seems like the stakes are more so of Aquaman might have to give up the throne if like enough people recognize it. And obviously the Dead King seems like he's going to do some other bad stuff. But like, I don't know. I just, between the three plots going on, 4 if you count Volko, I'm not sure which one seems like the biggest stakes. I would have said the Dead King up until this issue, but since Scavenger is now attacking Atlantis, like, that seems pretty bad. That seems like a really big deal. So the more we focus on the Dead King stuff, I'm sitting here wondering, when's it gonna be, like, the big important, like, when is he going to say, I plan on ruling the surface world, or I'm going to take over the seas and, like, Iron Fist or something? Like, when does he become a bad guy? I guess is my point. Because yes, he's creepy looking. Yes, he uses his ice powers very liberally to stop people. But like, there's nothing here yet that isn't saying that he is just the legitimate ruler of Atlantis and is going to do a decent job, you know? So overall, I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of where should my focus be drawn to more. If all 3 of these plots are going to come together in a really cool way, I'm down for it. But they seem so separate and they've been so separate that I just don't see it happening. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. I'll just give it a flat 7. I liked it. I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy it, but I really do think that it is a problem. Like the Orm rescue arc got 1 page and then 1 panel. You have too many plots running if if one of the plots is getting that much attention. Like it's barely anything. So yeah, 7 in general. The Flash, number 22, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Francis Manapul. So last issue, we had a whole big reveal that the last guy who was in the Speed Force during that whole long arc thing was killed by Reverse Flash. And we are seeing the fallout of that. There's a blood-stained wall, and Barry is coming up to the crime scene, and he's like, okay, everyone who was in the Speed Force except for Iris is now dead. So someone's going around killing them, and everyone thinks that I was also in the Speed Force, but in reality, of course, I am the Flash. So as he's making his way up, we see Director Singh is like, hey, bro, you're on desk duty. You're supposed to be down in the basement. What are you doing out of the crime scene? He's like, I just had to be here. Like, this guy could be targeting me as well. And he's like, yeah, that's why you shouldn't be here. Bro, go back to the basement. And he's like, I can't do that. And Singh's like, okay, well, you don't have a choice. I go back to the basement. So we see Dr. Elias wake up screaming the word Flash. And apparently he was having a nightmare. And he walks down into his lab. And he gives his monologue about, like, I've always been obsessed with the Flash. And the Flash, he has a messiah complex. He wants everyone to see him saving the day and doing all that stuff. I am a scientist. I am using this utilitarian-wise. I am here for the greatest benefit of the most people. And in order to do that, I'm unlocking his energy. And in order to do that effectively, the Flash must die. So we see the offices of the Central City Citizen where Iris West works. Everyone's kind of like frozen for a minute, and except for Iris. She looks up and she sees the Flash is there. And he's like, hey, we had another murder. It wasn't Barry, but I'm going to need you to come with me. So I step up onto the roof, and Iris puts on a Flash costume that was custom made for her. And he's just like, it's perfect. And she's like, I don't know. It seems a little bit tight. And Barry's like, I know. But she's like, okay, well, what's the point of the suit? And he's like, okay, the reason I said it's perfect is because it's actually blocking my ability to, like, sense the Speed Force in you. And I think that's the reason that the other people have been targeted, and yet somehow I haven't been. So as long as you wear this suit, theoretically, whoever's doing these killings can't find you. So second up, we're on this roof because this is where the first guy died. And I've sent, because it was ruled a suicide or whatever, I've got this bit of evidence that police didn't notice. And it's part of, like, the Utah salt flats or whatever. So we're going to go check out that. And so she puts on her goggles, and he super speeds her over to the Utah salt flats. And Iris asks, like, oh, I can't stop thinking about Barry. Are you sure he's safe? And Flash is like, yes, no, I gave him his own suit. Why are you so concerned with Barry? And she's like, I don't know. Don't worry about it. So as they make it out to the flats, they see that something exploded here. There's some kind of wreckage. And Flash manages to piece it together that it is part of a monorail that Dr. Elias had made. So they take it back to Patty Spivot in the police lab, and he's doing his whole Flash thing. He's like, yes, I was wondering if you could run this for DNA or whatnot, Miss Spivot. And she's like, yeah, sure thing, Flash. And so she scans it, gets some DNA off it, and says, yeah, I'll run it through the system. We'll see if we can get anything. It might be a little while, though. No promises. And Flash is like, yes, well, thank you, Miss Spivot. By the way, because that is Dr. Elias's monorail, I'm going to go talk to him. But I can't bring Iris along because he might be the killer. So you need a babysitter. Bye. And Patty's like, great. Tell me, why did Flash give you such a tight costume, Iris? She's like, I don't know. So at that point, they've been sitting there for a while, and Iris is like, so, Patty, you moved in with Barry. Is that not working out? Is it look like it's about to fall apart? And Patty's like, no, actually, we're pretty much made for each other. And she's like, oh, great. So we cut back to Elias's lab. He's running more tests on all the Speed Force energy or whatever, and he's monologuing in his head of, like, I took advantage of a lot of people, but that's the price I had to pay. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. And we see him look into the glass on the tube, and in the reflection, we see the reverse flash. But it is actually him. It's actually the reverse flash showed up behind him and smashes his head into the tube. And he's like, hey, Dr. Elias, I really want all this energy, so I'm going to take it. How dare you bottle it up for yourself? And so he starts taking all the Speed Force energy in. And he's like, who are you? Are you the Flash? And Reverse Flash is like, no, I'm something much worse. So Elias fires a gun at him that will extract the Speed Force energy out of him again. And Reverse Flash uses his ability to turn back time, and even explains it. He's like, I'm not just some backwards Flash. I can turn back time. I can put everything in reverse. And he reverses time, walks over to Elias, and is ready to snap his neck. When Barry comes in, punches Reverse Flash in the face, and he's like, Flash, hey, I've been looking for you, man. I'm going to take your energy. And Flash is like, I don't know who you are, but the killing stops now. And he's like, right after I kill you. So they get into a fight, and it's just, a full-page layout here of Barry basically saying, like, I put all of my friends in danger just by their association with me. And then Reverse Flash takes advantage of him being all pouty or whatever, punches him in the face, knees him in the stomach, uses some spikes that I guess he has as a power, and pins Barry to the wall. And it seems like these are Barry's last moments. I'm sure he won't possibly get out of this. It's good. It's a fine enough issue. It did feel, pardon the pun, very fast. It feels like it just went by very quickly in that there wasn't a lot of substance to it. Like there was the bit where Barry picks up Iris, the bit where Barry drops off Iris, and then the ending with Reverse Flash. And that's really about all it was. So could have used a bit more to it, but in terms of like character development, I think it does a lot for Iris, Patty, Barry, love triangle thing going on. Even if it is just Barry and Patty, and then Iris is off to the side, like, please let me in. I want to be a part of this. So overall, I'm going to say this is it's just a 7. It's fine. It's a good enough issue. It's not great or anything like that. But it is on par with what I expect from Flash. I don't really have any major issues with it. It's just not doing anything fantastic. So 7 for this, and we'll see if it picks up the pace. I don't want that pun pardoned next issue. All-Star Western number 22, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. So last issue, Jonah was brought into the present day. I thought it might have been the future, but this issue confirms that it is present day. And he was put into Arkham Asylum because he's obviously a crazy person who went around shooting people. So we open up in Arkham, and he's being interviewed by Dr. Jeremiah Arkham, and he's like, hey, you seem familiar. And he's going through all the motions with him, and Arkham's like, yes, okay, so you say you're Jonah Hex, and you say you know my great-great-grandfather Amadeus Arkham, and you say all of this, but nothing you've said is not something that cannot be gleaned from a book and whatnot. And we see Jonah starting to light up a cigarette, and he's like, Jesus Christ, this thing tastes like poison. And Amadeus, it's going to take a while to get Amadeus out. Jeremiah's like, dude, they are poison. And he's like, what? You're trying to kill me? So he starts fighting all the guards and throwing down with everybody. We see the heavier armed guards come in and tackle him down to the ground. And Jeremiah shows him the Surgeon General's warning. And he's like, see? Poison, but it takes more than just one. Like, we're not trying to poison you. And he's like, oh, next thing you're going to tell me is that whiskey's bad for you. And he's like, yeah, okay. Anyway, point being is that I want to help you, but you're not doing anything to convince me. You still just seem like a crazy person. And yes, you are putting on a convincing act, but I believe that it's just that, an act. And if I don't believe you, then I'm sending you to Blackgate Prison. I hope you understand that. And he's like, I'm telling you, I'm a bounty hunter. So we see them. He says okay, yeah, you also had these guns on you. And Jonah makes the point of yeah, no, it's my right to have a gun. He's like, yeah, but you need a permit. And he's like, you don't, but people would be safer if they all had guns. And immediately Jeremiah's like, we are not going to have this discussion. We're not doing the gun debate thing. I'm just trying to understand why you think you're a man out of time. And he's like, look, your great-great-grandfather wrote a book about me. Like, you know all about me, and I know about your family too. And he starts listing off all of Amadeus' stuff, but then more specifically Amadeus' mother, who of course had her own mental illness and whatnot. And Jonah's like, yeah, no, like, what happened to her? You speak of her with such shame. What, she ended up killing herself finally at the end of it all? And that gets Jeremiah pissed. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. We're done here. So he's about to leave. And then Jonah calls out. He's like, wait a minute, hold on. Does this town still have a Wayne casino? And he's like, what? No, fine, I'll play. No, it doesn't have a Wayne casino. And it's like, what, did Alan Wayne sell it? And he's like, yeah, I guess so, because it doesn't exist anymore. And he says, well, Matt, tell the Waynes they owe me money because I had a 30% share in that. So Jeremiah's like, okay, hold on. So he goes to Wayne Tower and he talks to Bruce Wayne. And he's like, yeah, no, I got this patient. He's a nut job. There's no way he's real. But he did make this claim that if it is true, would be something that like could reveal more about him. So would you be able to look into that and see if your family did sign any agreements with him? And Bruce is like, yes, of course, totally. As he's playing putt-putt in his office. And he's like, I'll send the papers over to you. No worries. So we, of course, then see Bruce is... he uses a bat drone to scan Jonah inside of Arkham. And he's like, who the heck are you? And Alfred comes in with an old chest of Alan Wayne's paperwork. And he's like, yes, Jonah Hex. I've heard quite a bit about him. The Grizzly Scar, the history in Gotham and whatnot. He had a whole thing, and I was very interested in him. And Batman looks at the paperwork, and he's like, yeah, this guy's probably delusional. But, and he sees Jonah's name on the paperwork. He's like, we should maybe look into him a little bit more. So the next day, Jonah is given back his outfit as part of Jeremiah. He gives all the inmates their outfits. And he's like, yeah, so I just want to understand you a little bit more. Like, why didn't you get plastic surgery for your face? And he's like, I have no idea what that is. He's like, fair enough. Tell me about your childhood. Were you breastfed as a child? And Jonah's like, what the hell are you at? No, screw this. And he starts beating the crap out of the guards again. And he takes Jeremiah hostage as the guards are coming after him. And Jeremiah's like, you're not going to get out of here. We've got all the gates covered. You're not going to be able to get out. Mind you, Arkham Asylum is up on a cliff next to the bay. So he says, well, I got a way out. And Jeremiah's like, please don't. And he takes Jeremiah, jumps off the cliff down into the bay below. And it's like, oh, geez, there's no way they survived. But we see they both did wash up inside a nearby sewer. And as they climb up, Jonah's like, hey, do you know how to work one of those fangled carriages? And he's like, yes, but I'd need the keys. And people don't just leave their keys in the carriage. And we see this guy about to get into his car, like a full-on sports car, as they come out of the sewer. And Jonah's like, hi there, friend. So they're taking this car around Gotham, which is... I mean, it looks like 70s New York. Like, there's at least 14 strip bars, like, all on top of each other here. And Jeremiah's like, oh, Jesus, where are we going to go? How are we supposed to make it here? And Jeremiah, for some reason, is saying that they're never going to make it over the bridge, which I think implies that it's supposed to be, like, a drawbridge, but they never actually show that. But anyway, we have them turn on the radio, which Jonah is just mesmerized by. It's talking about Batwing showing up because, of course, Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti started writing that book as well. And at this point, we cut back to Arkham Asylum where Batman's shown up and the guards are like, yeah, we already reported to the police that Jeremiah's been taken. Sorry. Batman's like, don't worry about it. I've taken care of that. I don't want anybody intervening because I need to bring this guy in myself. This is just going to take some time. So we see that they have reached a police barrier because there are some members of the Mutants gang are currently like robbing a bank or something nearby. And as they're waiting, Jeremiah's like, look, if you really think you're Jonah Hex, I've got something that can prove it. In my my great-great-grandfather's notes, he wrote down a story, just a tiny little thing about a woman who saved his life that he never wrote in any of his public books. It's only in our private thing and has never been shared. What is the name of that woman? And he says, Tallulah Black. And immediately Jeremiah's like, oh my God, you are him. So at that point, the police come up and they say like, oh yeah, no, there's the mutants, they're robbing a bank up ahead. It's like, what are you guys going to a Halloween party or something? And then one of the cops gets shot, and Jonah immediately hops out of the car, pulls one of the wounded cops to the side, takes his gun, and is like, I'm about to save all your asses. And we see him just marching like a man possessed up towards the mutants gang, firing off shots, just taking them out one by one. And finally, one of them gets a handle on Hex, starts attacking him. He digs into his face and rips off his visor, pulling out his eyes in the process. And one of them comes up from behind and fires off a bazooka. And then that's just where the issue ends. We're just in the middle of a firefight with Jonah facing down some kind of neo-futuristic punk gang. So yeah, a lot going on. I like how they did provide an out of like, no, Jonah, you can prove you're real because of this tiny thing. I like that they do have that little thing where we're probably not going to worry that much about Jonah being proven real anymore. We got it out of the way in one issue, all good, and we'll see where his adventures in the future take place from here. But overall, it's a fine issue. Probably not up towards my favorite, but one of the better ones within the past, I don't know, 6 months or so. Like one of the better ones out of this future stuff for sure. So, since Booster Gold got involved, I should say. So I'll give this one I'll give it a flat 7. 6.5. It's again, not bad. It's just a little bit of the same exact thing over and over again. Of Jeremiah being like, you're not from the past. And he's like, bet you I am. And we just do that for the whole issue. So 6.5. Green Team number 3, written by Art Baltazar and Franco, art by Ig Guara. So, where do we begin? So, last issue we had the bodyguard for Muhammad basically saying, I know a guy that you can hire to keep you safe. And Sylvia, I think her name was, got a robot arm because she had a cut on her arm when she picked up the tech disc thing. Okay, just accept that and move on. So this issue just picks up sometime later where the Green Team have hired Deathstroke. And I say sometime later because it's definitely less than like a day. But they hired Deathstroke, who were making their way through this building. And Deathstroke's like, no, I refuse. I'm not taking the job. And basically the bodyguard, whatever his Abisha, is trying to convince Deathstroke of like, look, I don't care about the Commodore, who's this entire time he's on the phone with JP Houston and Sylvia saying like, no, don't worry about it. I got it all taken care of, guys. Just sit tight and I'll have this all situated in a minute. And he's like, I don't care about the Commodore. I only care about Muhammad. He's the one that is trying to be killed and we just need to protect him. And we see that Muhammad's talking to LL on the little tablet device. And she's like, I wish I was along. And he's like, no, you don't. This is not as fun as it seems to be. As, mind you, they're still being fired upon. Like, they're in the middle of a firefight. And Deathstroke is still just saying, like, yeah, okay, and how did you guys even get here? And it's like, yeah, we drove the Batmobile here. It's a whole big thing. So we cut over to Sylvia and JP. There's a bunch of paparazzi surrounding their building because Sylvia is still like the starlet who missed her like showing up on set. And JP's just yelling into the phone because there's so much gunfire going on around Commodore, he can't hear him. And he's like, I don't know. He said they'll be there soon and something about costumes. Like, I don't know. We'll just sit and wait and see. And he looks out the window and he sees across the rooftop is Riot. And he's like, crap. Oh, geez. And there's a knock at the door. And he's like, don't answer that. Oh, sad. But then at the door, it turns out it's a concierge who's holding Sylvia's leopard kitten. Cheetah kitten, I guess. I don't know. But he pulls in the concierge, shuts the door quickly. And he's just like, you sent him out to get your cat? Like the Riot people, the stalkers, they followed him here. They're outside. They're going to get us. Sorry, her name is Cecilia, not Sylvia. My bad. His nickname for her is Syl, which is what was throwing me off. But anyway, he's like, oh, I feel bad for yelling at her. Like, she's a mess sometimes. And I just want to fix things for her. And we see that as he's like yelling like this isn't a joke anymore, like we have to get out of here fast, all of a sudden the building starts shaking and we see that there is some Black Ops military helicopters rappelling down to the penthouse they're staying in and attaching these giant machinery magnets. And they're all wearing alien masks. And as it comes over the news, with the paparazzi still reporting that, oh, it turns out this is all just a publicity stunt for the next movie Cecilia is going to star in, which is about aliens, and it's going to start pre-production soon. And they literally pick up the penthouse off the building and fly it away to safety. As the paparazzi is like, oh man, it turns out that the Commodore bought the hotel just before this happened so that he would be able to make this, get this escape route planned out. So anyway, that all happens there. Then we see Deathstroke again with the group in Miami. And he's saying, oh, I've got a target here. His name is Manfredi. And he's taking, he's a bad guy. He's a very bad guy. And he's taking things from other people. And Commodore's like, we don't have time for this. I'm just going to deal with this guy. And so he throws down a sticky grenade, like a grenade that explodes into sticky goop that expands into foam and stops all the guys who were shooting at Deathstroke. And he's like, there, see, taken care of. And Deathstroke's like, great, but I need to get to the room past all the sticky goop. How do you explain I do that, idiot? And Muhammad starts to chime in. He's like, no, I ain't talking to you. I don't even know why you're here. The only reason you're not dead is because of your security guard here. And the security guard says, okay, by the way, this is Prince Katani, he's the one that I'm working with now. And Deathstroke's like, oh, I'm sorry, you're Prince Katani. That changes everything. So Commodore pulls out this power glove that he waves his hand, and then all the goop just magically moves to the side along with the guys. So they're able to make their way into the door behind it. And as they get back, Manfredi is using a zip line that Deathstroke already had set up to try to escape. And he's beating up all Manfredi's goons as all the everyone else is just standing there Deathstroke, do you want us to help? And he's like, no, don't touch anything. I'll take care of this. And Manfredi makes his way off the zip line as Deathstroke goes down after them. And he just jumps. He's not going down. But then we see that Muhammad and Commodore have decided oh, well, that guy's a bad guy. We need to stop him. So they hop on the thing and they go down. And Muhammad makes the point of okay, but we only know he's a bad guy because Deathstroke is saying that. And Deathstroke's not exactly a good guy either. And Commodore's like, dude, you got to roll with your gut if you're going to be part of the green team. That's all a big thing here. So they make their way to the bottom. They take out Manfredi. And Deathstroke's like, okay, I changed my mind. I'll take your riot contract, but I'm taking double. And Prince Katani here needs to get his father to owe me a favor. And without even saying anything, Muhammad's like, done. And the security guard hates that. But Deathstroke's like, all right, cool. Here's the first half of my payment as he takes Manfredi's money. And he's like, and I'll be in touch in a day or so. So at that point, they're like, okay, we need to reconnect with the rest of the green team. We need to all get safe. Let's do this. And they make their way to Monaco. We see the next day they're all sitting waiting inside of a limousine for Deathstroke to contact them. And we see that JP is really upset with the whole situation. He doesn't want any part of the green team. He just wants to get Cecilia out of here to safety. But it seems that Cecilia is kind of getting into the whole green team thing. She seems to be interested in the whole Deathstroke angle. So he's like, oh, am I going to lose her? And in the middle of his thought, their car is smashed into from the side. And turns out that Riot was driving the car. He pulls out Commodore and he's like, oh, we knew you'd be here. So JP tries to activate Commodore's disc. It doesn't work because it's gene locked to him. But then Muhammad ends up having his own suit. And he punches out Riot. And then Deathstroke comes in and delivers the final blow and ties Riot up. And he's like, all right, there you go. I used you guys as bait. I don't care what you have to say about that. The contract was that I catch one of these guys. So here he is. And they're like, what are we supposed to do with him? He's like, well, his superpower, as I've already managed to figure out, is that he can distribute his pain. So all of them share in pain, so therefore they're able to take a bunch more hits. But I've also figured out that the main guy, the head chief Riot, he's somewhere in Monaco. So good luck with that. Just torture this guy a bit to figure it out. Anyway, I'm out. Prince Katani, remember you owe me a favor. Bye. And so Deathstroke leaves. And at that point, Commodore's like, all right, let's do it. Let's figure out what this guy is. And JP's like, are you going to torture him? He's like, no, I'm not going to. Okay, I might torture him a little bit. But first, take off his mask. And we don't see who it is, but they say, that's impossible. I thought you were dead. So whoever it is probably dead. This was a confusing issue. It wasn't so much in the fact of what it was by itself, but it's the fact that we didn't get that bridge of them actually hiring Deathstroke. We just went from last issue of them saying, like, I know who you can hire. And then, like, 4 pages of the Cecilia plot. And then in this one, it's like, all of a sudden, Deathstroke's here. I don't know. It seemed weird. Also, the Manfredi thing, that seemed random. That was just, I understand it's Deathstroke was in the middle of a job, but, like, I kept expecting it to be like, oh, no, he's working on a job already for them, I guess. But no, it's just a random-ass guy. So, yeah, I don't know. It not that great of an issue, all things considered. If anything, it's just getting Riot off the table. Which, did we really need that for how short the series is going to be? I know they didn't know how short it was going to be, but seriously, we could have stretched this villain out for the whole series, and I don't think anyone would have noticed. Overall, though, I'm going to say this one is probably a 6. Not that great. Art style's fine, but it is just kind of a intermediary issue. It doesn't really feel like it's really doing much of anything. So, see if it picks up next time. Teen Titans number 22, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Eddy Barrows and Jesus Marino. Last issue, I'm not even going to tell you what happened because this first page is just a full recap by Beast Boy talking to Robin. And I'm just going to read the whole damn thing. Some crazy demon named Trigon comes to Earth and he's all keepsies. The Teen Titans are like, no way, Trigon, dude. Go back to the toaster oven you call home. Then he takes off and leaves his daughter behind, but Raven's cool with it because she's all, I never liked that guy anyway. He sends her brothers back to grab her, but you all go A-team on their asses and put them in a sling. Now Deadly Daddy is back and he's taken possession of all the superpowered Teen Titans and he's going to kill us. There you go. That's everything that happened over like the whole arc. So we see all the Teen Titans going after Raven. She makes duplicate of herself as splitting her soul self, and she audibly says, like, I can't hold this for very long, Red Robin. And they're like, thanks for sharing your weakness. And she's like, you're possessed by my dad, who knew my weakness. Shut up. And so they all start fighting. We see Trigon as they're like, ha ha ha. I imagine how easy it would be to have these Titans destroy the world. I could just send them out, no problems. And we see all of them like using their powers against Raven and Raven using her powers against them. And in the end, Beast Boy turns into a giant octopus, latches himself onto Trigon's head long enough to distract him, so Red Robin can zoom down with his super pointy wings and stab Trigon in the back of the head through the eyes. And then he just leaves his wing behind. And Trigon is just like, wow, good job, kid. I respect that. Anyway, I'm still going to destroy the world, but you can have your victory today. And then he leaves. He just disappears. All the Titans are freed. And Raven's like, oh, I have to take out the Titans just in case they've still got some residual energy left. And Red Robin's like, no, they're cool. Trust me on that. And she's like, oh, okay. So at that point, everyone gets up and they're all like, oh, hey, yeah, we did it. But like, look at New York. At what cost? Everything is in ruins. And then all of a sudden, coming out of a portal are the Men in Black. I'm not even kidding. It's a group of like people wearing suits that are like, hey, here's the thing. We owe you guys a favor. Don't ask for what, but we're here to clean this stuff up and wipe everybody's memories and everything will be fine. And so they do exactly that. But then Robin points out, wait a minute, Szymon here killed a dozen soldiers, and that's been weighing very heavily on our consciousness. And she says, no, actually, it was all just an illusion. There were no soldiers. Szymon killed nobody. So the conscience is clear. Don't have to worry about that. And Raven's like, yep, that sounds like my dad. He makes illusions like that to break down your soul or whatnot. So that's doesn't make any sense. But we keep moving, and the lady in charge, who I think might be Jocelyn Lore, who we've seen before, but they don't actually say that, so I don't think it is. But regardless, she's like, hey, just to be clear, I owed you. This is a one-off. If we ever meet again, you guys are done. So she disappears. We go back to Robin's yacht where the whole Teen Titans crew are like, Raven, you did such a good job. We want you to be part of the team. And she's like, but what about my dad? And it's like, well, clearly you don't like him and you're able to beat him back. So we're cool with it. And she's basically like, oh, yeah, no, it's great. I'm totally in on the Teen Titans. Oh, and I knew, Red Robin, that you were a good leader, despite the fact that you did all those horrible things like go up against a government agency and gather everybody on a boat, making them dependent for their home, and also making out with both Cassie and Kieran. That was all just Trigon pushing you to your limits, but you came through. Anyway, I'm going to bed. Bye. And every one of the other Titans is like, I'm sorry, you did what? You did what, Red Robin? So as Raven gets into her room, she kneels down. She says, Father, I'm one of them. Your plan worked perfectly. Oh, no, she's a mole. So we see Red Robin trying to explain. Immediately, Kid Flash takes off. He's pissed off about that. Cassie and Connor also leave, so it's just Bunker and Red Robin left as Solstice chases after Kid Flash, and he's just like, yeah, I messed up, didn't I? And he's like, yeah, they need a minute, or like many, so just let him have that. And we see Kid Flash is locked up in his room. He's barricaded the door. Solstice is like, please don't shut me out. Like, you heard her. He was under Trigon's control. And it's like, yeah, that's his excuse. What's yours? You made out with him too. I need to think about this. And then all of a sudden, a blinding light opens up in his room, and a person comes out saying, Bartor, we have tracked you across the centuries. You are wanted for crimes and whatnot. And he's like, Bartor, I know that name. And it's like, yeah, it's clearly your name. Why would you think it's anything else? Anyway, you're being arrested. And so a bunch of hands come out of a portal and they grab Bartor as he's dragged back into the future. Why does Scott Lobdell retcon things that he himself wrote? That's my question. That's my question without an answer. Like, I understand this idea of like, oh, you have to set up suspense and stuff like that. But here's the thing. If the suspense thing didn't actually happen, then it's just cheap. It's just stupid. Like, you had Szymon kill people. You had Szymon kill living, breathing soldiers. And then you didn't. You just said, oh, that wasn't even a thing. And you had this whole thing with like, oh no, Red Robin is actually evil. He's bad. But nope, it was Trigon. It was Trigon the whole time. Maybe that was the plan. I'm not saying it wasn't the plan. But it just feels cheap. It just feels like everything we've done doesn't matter. Because you just change it as soon as it's done. And yes, I'm speaking directly to Scott Lobdell here. I don't understand this writing style. And this is across all of his books. This isn't just a Teen Titans thing. This is a Superboy thing. This is a Superman thing. This is everything he writes. He seemingly sets up stuff, and then within 2 issues, it's like, yeah, but that was just a joke. No, it wasn't. It happened. I saw it. Just run with the consequence. Explore these things. It's okay for characters to have consequences. You can do that. It's actually called storytelling. Overall, this was an okay issue. It felt really empty. It didn't feel like much of anything happened. Because again, Trigon just showed up, had control over all the Titans, and said, actually, you know what, I'm good, peace, and left. And this is now, mind you, the 3rd time he's left in this story arc. I give it a 3. I give it a 3. And all of that is just frustration with the arc as a whole. Because it had like 17 plots going. Remember the dude who was able to turn into light? Do you remember that? Did they ever deal with that? Genuine. I forgot if they did. And if so, it's a crappy plot. Because they like didn't make a deal out of it. It's a 3. I don't even... Maybe I said 3.5 before. But it's a 3 now. So, yeah. We'll see what happens in the trial of Kid Flash, which I know is the next thing up after this. But, oh, God, I'm so done with this book. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this July 24th, 2013. And next week is, of course, everybody's favorite Fifth Week. You know, I always say it with such pomp and circumstance, but in reality, Fifth Week is just kind of code for like, you could probably skip this episode, but you can't this time. No. This time, it's episode 100. And a nice big round number means I'm sure to do something special. Absolutely. You definitely have to watch and find out. It's not like I'm going to wait a month until we hit the actual anniversary episode and do something special then instead. No. It's going to be next week. So why don't I tell you the comics that we are actually going to be covering next week that are not backup stories, because believe it or not, we actually have a decent selection. So in terms of annuals, we have the second annuals of Batman, Detective Comics, Superman, Flash, and Animal Man. And then additionally, we have Batman Incorporated number 13, which I believe is the final issue of that series, not counting a special that came out a few months later. Number 22 of Red Lanterns, and number 2 of Trinity of Sin Pandora. One of those is at least interesting. I gotta say, they're really laying it thick on the Batman, though. We got Batman, Batman Incorporated, and Detective Comics. All oversized issues, all leading off the show. So, lucky for me, Batman seems to be the only thing that this audience actually consistently watches as part of the show. So, I expect to see the numbers drop as we hit Superboy. Please don't, though. I cannot stress enough. I say that as a joke with a bit too much truth behind it. But you need to understand how much I dislike Superboy. Like, I'm not doing this for my health. I want you to understand this. So please tune into that. But regardless, if you have any comments on anything that I have reviewed on this episode, last episode, any episode at all, go ahead and hit me up. Mostly on Discord, because Twitter is just a heaping trash fire at this point, and I don't think this bottom bar that I have on screen will make it to the end of the year, but we will see. But links are in the description no matter where you are listening or watching to that. Speaking of which, thank you so much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to turn in next week, and yeah, that'll do it for me. Always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.